allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are here tonight. We've got a pretty full house. We're going to start with our auditors and the audit plan. They're going to give us an overview of where we are, talk about the timeline, some new GASB requirements, and so I'll turn it over to you. I'd ask you to introduce your name and your background quickly.
Great. So my name is Vanessa Rosito. I'm a principal at CLA. And with me is David Flint. He's also a principal at CLA. I've been at the firm for 33 years and I'm actually retiring at the end of December. So I am leading the audit this year, but Dave will take over the audit next year. So just to make sure there's good succession, he's going to be very involved in this year's audit, so next year will go swimming. This year will go swimmingly too, but we want to make sure with the transition that next year goes swimmingly too.
Yeah, David Flint. I'm in my 17th year with the firm. Again, like Vanessa, I'm a principal. You know, we both focus specifically on municipalities in the state of Connecticut.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and
So in your packet is our governance letter. It is I don't know, maybe a 5 or 6 page document, or maybe more than that. I'm not gonna go over it in detail. I'm just gonna kind of summarize. You've received this for a number of years. I don't know how long you've been on the Board of Finance, but it basically outlines the responsibilities that we have under all of our standards. It outlines the responsibilities that the board has, that management has. And basically the document wants us to open up a two-way communication because the Board of Finance is the body that hires the auditors because we're here to audit management. So we report to you. And if there's anything that you have concerns about or want to talk about, we want you to talk to us. So that's really what this letter is saying. There are some, things in here about fraud, and we do have a discussion with at least one Board of Finance member. I don't know if that's already happened this year, but usually in the audit field work, there will be we call it a fraud interview, just to kind of open up.
this happens this year.
Okay, great. So, does anybody have any questions for me about this letter or about?
Amy, I don't see it in the packet. I know we got it sent separately.
Page 113.
Oh, it's in communications. Okay.
Do you guys want copies? I have copies.
No, I've read it. Does anyone want a hard copy?
No.
Okay.
I'm just curious, why is the fraud thing with one member? Is it because it's personnel stuff or what?
That's our practice to interview one member of the Board of Finance. Sometimes we rotate the member from year to year.
Tell the Board of Finance member what you found in the town?
No. We want to talk to the Board of Finance to get any concerns that they may have about the town. There's a number of questions that we ask. Where do you think the risks are? I don't know the questions off the top of my head, but
It's just to open up a line of communication to get you start thinking about, hey, is there fraud? Yes, no. Do you think there might be fraud? Do you have any suspicions of fraud? Has anyone talked to you about suspicions of fraud? Things like that. Are there any controls, processes, or procedures that you think can be improved upon? Is there anything you would like us to look into? Those are the kind of questions we do, and typically we rotate who we speak to on the board every year.
So you pick the person?
Correct, yes.
So did you find anything to talk to them about?
No, it was a 30-minute discussion back and forth. I mean, there's a lot of things that as a Board of Finance member, we're not sitting in the day-to-day. But to what the questions directed at me as a member, do you see this? Do you what do you see as the oversight? gaps that there might be, what kind of communication do we get, and how are we comfortable as a board, or my interpretation as a member of the entire board, with what we're seeing and, you know, the communication back and forth, relationships between the board and the finance department.
And no specific cases of concern.
There was nothing that I saw that I reported on.
Yeah, we also interview other members from management all the way down to lower level employees. There's, you know, we have various questions based on the role that they are within the town.
But that, I mean, that's the purpose of this letter, to open up communication. So if any of you have concerns, does, you know, not just the person we interview, want you to call us.
I'll just speak to the public. No member of the Board of Finance has raised concerns, and we're very proud of the work that staff does. So for members of the public, this is just a standard question that our auditors need to ask.
Correct.
This board, I'm not aware of anyone having any concerns. Is that an accurate statement? Okay.
And it's important that they, you know, ask the board separately to make sure that there are no concerns.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong since I've left, but those are confidential as well. So people's answers are not circulated.
And just so I think I mentioned before the meeting, we're having our progress audit presentation next month. So
Okay, great.
kudos to Amy and Mark for getting that done. Looking forward to that presentation. Okay.
So our audit timeline, we already started our preliminary procedures, planning for the audit for 2025. We are scheduled to focus on the audit the weeks of 11/3 and 11/10. The audit is done remotely, so we did just meet with Amy before this meeting. She's already begun to upload the support for us, which is great. We could get a head start as we have time, as time permits, before those dates of 11/3 and 11/10, which is great. We definitely do appreciate that. I did have a bullet point here, expectations for issuance this year. Our expectation, as it is always, is to issue by 12/31. It sounds like the information has been transmitted to the actuary for the actuary reports already this year. So I don't anticipate that being an issue this year.
And I just for the record, if it becomes an issue, we would like it brought directly to our board.
Okay.
And we can do that through a Zoom meeting.
Not a problem. So we do have two new accounting standards going into effect for 2025. The first one is GASB 101. That's right, we are in the 100s now for GASB standards, if you can believe it. GASB 101 has to deal with compensated absences. The town has always accrued for compensated absences, basically you're sick and vacation. But this standard kind of supersizes that calculation now, and you know, in the past you would typically only accrue for vacation and sick time that's vested and will be paid out upon termination. Now we have to accrue non-vested time that we estimate will be used. So sick and vacation time that we estimate will be used over the course of their career with the town. So we expect that all these compensated numbers, accruals, to go up as we include these additional sick and vacation time. We've provided some materials to Amy, and it sounds like HR is already working on it. So we will audit that sooner rather than later, so it's not something that could potentially hold up the audit this year.
What is the purpose for doing that? What is the rationale?
That's a great question. Yeah, this standard is a lot of work for. I gotta be careful with what I say.
Why? It's silly. It's just they just want to, I think the GASB wants to look at all of the liabilities. That seems to be the direction that they've been going with all of these standards lately, OPEB, pension. So I think it's just another, you know, big liability they think is out there I don't, you know, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I don't think the rating agencies are going to care if the liability goes up because you're not going to have to pay it.
Right.
It's kind of a paper liability,
We
it's
only
just,
roll over 10 a year anyway, so it doesn't
Right.
accumulate.
right, so.
I hope that's still the case.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely getting a lot of pushback on this standard. You know, we're just training and auditing it how it reads.
We're just following the rules.
So when we see a big number, neither this board nor the public should panic, is that what I'm
That's
hearing?
right.
Agree 100%. And you know, it's a number that is on your government-wide financial statements exhibit 1. So, you know, it's not impacting your general fund
Right.
or anything like that. Also going into effect this year is GASB 102. Certain risk disclosures. The biggest thing here is concentration. So if the town were to have a taxpayer that, let's say, was more than 5% of tax revenues, that information now needs to be disclosed within the financial statements. I don't think anything for Simsbury, but let's look at Bristol, Connecticut, for example. If ESPN packed up and left, they would obviously have a huge tax revenue deficit. So those are the kind of things we're trying to identify with that standard. And then two standards for fiscal year 2026 going into effect next year. GASB 103, there's gonna be some financial model improvements. I think when this first started talking about this years ago, we got all nervous that the financial statement was gonna change completely. And it really was quite minor. I think all of the changes are beneficial. There's gonna be some more information required within the MD&A. The budget,
For the public, MD&A.
the management's discussion and analysis, which is at the beginning of the financial statements. There will also be enhancements to the budgetary schedules. We are now required to do a variance column between the original and final budget to see what those changes were. And any significant changes, there will have to be a narrative to explain those changes. And then there's also new disclosure requirements for unusual or infrequent items.
So when you say the standard, would that be original budget, amended budget, final budget?
Correct. Yep.
That's curious, why hasn't that been required?
Well, so we have columns for original and
Right.
final now, and there's just no
Yeah.
column that shows the change between the two.
Oh, I was just adding a
It just doesn't
dollar change
calculate out the
percentage.
variance.
Which is, yes, exactly.
You wanna see the map.
And then GASB 104 has to do with disclosures for capital assets. I think the biggest change there is that if you guys remember the standards for the last couple of years for leases and subscriptions, we added those as capital assets. The standard requires them to be broken out separately in your capital asset footnote. We've already been doing that, so there's no issue there. We will now have to separately disclose also capital assets held for sale. So if you guys have any property that you're only holding to resale, those need to be a separate line item. And then if there's any other intangible items that the town may have, those have to be broken out separately too. I don't expect any of those, but there could potentially be assets held for resale. Any questions for us?
Questions for our auditors at this point?
Well, you're about to launch, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I assume, I don't assume, do you see any obstacles to launching as thoroughly as you need to?
No, you know, we met with Amy before this and it sounds like she's in as good a shape as she's ever been for us this year. So, you know, very, very
I
positive
do wanna
outlook.
recognize the Board of Selectmen and also Mark for staffing HR and of course Amy for coordinating the whole thing. But that was made possible because we are now fully staffed, so that's great. Will you be coming to us with a draft in advance of the final copy?
Typically always do, yes.
And we can expect that in November, December?
Let's see, so it's going to be December, I'm just trying to figure out, yeah, so if we're working on an 11/3, 11/10, probably I would say probably about December 10th-ish. Try to draft, give Amy some time to prepare the management's discussion and analysis. and provide any comments on that draft. The goal is always to issue before the holiday.
But will you come to this board as well?
With a draft?
Yeah.
We absolutely can.
Okay.
Is that your preference?
OPM just put out guidance suggesting that the draft be shown to the auditing committee, which is technically us.
So
You asked if that's our preference, and the answer is yes.
Yes.
so then we would need to coordinate that with the Board of Finance meeting.
Can the draft be disseminated without a meeting?
Yeah.
I don't think
Yes.
we need a meeting.
Are you looking
Because
for
the turnaround is typically tight between us.
Yeah,
Like I only have like a week to review sometimes.
we don't need a meeting per se. We could email you the draft, give comments back to Amy or us, and then we could present the final in January, whenever you're used to.
That's how I interpreted that, were you
Yeah.
interpreting something?
Seems reasonable.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Alright, any other questions for our at this point? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so
Have a
much,
good
guys.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Good night. Vanessa, this is her second. We've met Vanessa many years.
Yes,
We're working
yes.
together, so thank you for coming back. And congratulations on
Thank you very much.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Okay, we are now going on to our economic development presentation we have with us. Simsbury's town planner. I want to invite you to come up and tell us what you've got, and I will let you go ahead and start your presentation. We did have an opportunity for members to, may I have a motion, since George, I don't want to make you wait for the finance director's report, may I have a motion to move the finance director's report till after the economic development? We had Todd made the motion, or made the second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you wanna frame this, Mr. Town Manager?
I'll just frame it briefly. This actually has been a lot of fun for us, so thanks very much, Chair and members of the board, people watching at home. And just wanna recognize our first selectman, Wendy Maxtutis, who is here in the audience with us as well, and has been provided a copy of George's analysis. So just wanna frame the work that went into what you're gonna hear about. Our assessor had a key role. And actually always has in terms of providing us and leaders throughout town government with an estimate of what's gonna be coming down the pike on the grand list, particularly the one immediately ahead of us. And since I've been here, and since George has been here, we've been overlaying that assessor's analysis with some back office work by George and his team with respect to taking a longer look. What's in the pipeline that's 2 or 3 years out. And also what you see here, and George will get to this, is potential projects. So we're starting to take more of a strategic look at what is coming down the pike. And I think the best way to frame this for the board is exactly the conversation I had with Francine, our assessor, when this started, is that, you know, we expect a very high level of confidence with respect to next October 1. And that high level of confidence declines as you go out year 2, year 3, year 4. So keep that in mind. But the point that we've made internally, and we appreciate this board and the Board of Selectmen embracing the idea that if you adjust for that confidence level, it's still very valuable to display things that quite frankly might not come to fruition, right? So then, and it's also, I think, important, I had this conversation with Wendy and others, that, you know, the public hears about some project that's in the works, and maybe it's gone to zoning and maybe it's gotten some level of approval and then nothing happens. And what's gonna happen with this? So George is gonna talk a little bit about some of the things that are on this sheet. We learned, and thank you, George, for printing a big copy, which I think everybody has, and those at home can watch on the TV, so take it away.
So everybody got kind of an early draft in your packet.
We like the colors too.
But we've really been working up to the moment, and so rely on the color version in front of you. It's the most up to date. Now, and typically and you get an economic development update from the planning director, and he shows you pretty pictures, and this is what's in the. So not really gonna do that tonight, although I have all those slides, but we really tried to provide this particular committee, with the data that's important to you. So the development projects, but as well as some assumptions by the assessor, and and in part an assumption on impact for some of them. So you have this in front of you. So what we've done is we've put together this development matrix that does way more than just describe projects. So what you see in front of you, and it's two-sided. It has, the way it's broken down, it has commercial projects that have been completed in the past years. Commercial projects under construction, meaning permits have been issued and inspections are occurring at those locations. We've got a category for approved pipeline projects. Those are projects that have their zoning entitlement for it's the easiest way to say it, have their zoning entitlement but haven't gone to any permitting process. We've got a potential project category, which are projects that may have visited the design review board or made a presentation to the town manager and staff, but have yet to kind of go through any zoning process that are good ideas, glint in the developer's mind, are mostly real, but haven't gone, through those additional steps that are required to go to build. And then just to round everything out, we did include the section for single family homes that are under construction, since we build significant sized single family homes in this town, and they have real budget impacts. So just wanted to also show that. And they are really just listed by line item, as you can see. Completion date, project details, square footage, estimated completion date. And then as Mark intimated, we've included assumptions from the assessor. So grand list assumptions, assessed real estate value, tax value if you use the current mill rate this year. Now that's stuff's way out of my lane mostly, but it is helpful that teamwork allowed to kind of put that stuff in front of you, so you kind of know the project and what their potential value could be over time. We've also added, since the packet went out, we added in that furthest right two columns for the residential projects. We've added estimated student generation. We added estimated population by project, and those are essentially the multifamily projects that have those kinds of impacts. Lisa asked me just to very quickly touch on student generation right now. We don't do full fiscal impact studies when we have projects of note. We often ask for student generation rates, let the school district look at them and confirm, but obviously multifamily projects and residential projects have more impacts than commercial projects do on cost of services and those kinds of things.
Mark, why don't we do a fiscal impact for major plans?
So I think there's a couple of reasons we don't do them. One is that under Connecticut state law, it's a little difficult to make zoning decisions based on fiscal impact. They're frowned upon by the courts. Meaning if we have land that we plan for residential development and a residential development comes, it's usually deemed to be in the location we wanted it. So it's really the POCD process or the comprehensive planning process that should determine that. We don't have a requirement for it, but I will tell you, Lisa, that when they come in, we do ask for it. So for the Silverman project, which has been the biggest project we've had, so I don't know that since I've been here, I'm into my fourth year now, there hasn't been a bigger project than that. But in that case, we did, just to get a sense of, because it was big enough, we can generate some, recommended conditions as part of that kind of negotiated review process. And there is value in doing that.
I can understand from the planning and zoning thing, I'm gonna ask you to change seats and sit over here. You can see the value to a financial planning board doing a fiscal impact analysis. as we do our financial planning.
Well, absolutely, and you know, I don't think that there will be a case in the future that we wouldn't ask for fiscal impact analysis as part of our review process. And quite frankly, developers are more than willing to provide that because often, particularly on the multifamily developments, it shows benefit and value to their product and their project more often than not.
There was a legislation, I don't know if it passed, where towns could charge the developer and we would do our own fiscal analysis. What was the status of that? Is that an option?
So the for complex projects, the town can ask a developer, say that again?
To pay a fee so that we could hire our own independent and not rely on their analysis.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not familiar with that being used in kind of any of our sister towns.
I'd be curious whether that law passed. I don't know.
We'll check it out.
Yeah, I think as part of a complex project though, we could hire, I mean, essentially the developer does pay and the zoning commission makes the decision that they've submitted that study, we'll get a third party reviewer to review their
What
study.
we did in New York, Chair, was the developer paid for it and could select one of an approved list of 3. In other words, they couldn't come to the table of the planning board in New York, the equivalent of zoning, and say, this is our independent consultant, it's from Nebraska, take it or leave it. They had to select one of our pre-approved. And it went through, you know, every now and then we would go out to bid and see, you know, who wanted to play in that sandbox, so the 3 would.
That's a fabulous
But I think
idea.
Well, it's better than them picking, but I think the developer, it's kind of like arbitration, you know, each side's gonna pick their own. So yeah, we pick 3, but the developer can pick the one of the 3. So something like that here, but I'll check and see whether that, what passed in Connecticut, cause I'm not sure.
And I will say this, not that my experience has been that more often than not, those third party reviews don't dispute too many items except for the cost of educating school children.
Can you talk about how that estimate is done? Cause I know different people do it differently. I know Montgomery County says it's $500.
So not on cost, I would refer to Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Curtis on how they do that analysis. That is not, I don't have expertise in that.
Do we have analysis from them on the cost for some of these projects where you've done student generation numbers?
We have analysis from them on zoning applications like the Hartford North or the Hartford South property. So as part of that process, I send that to them for review and they provided an analysis on that. Yes.
So
But-
for instance,
Why wouldn't they just use like an average per pupil cost, realizing that on the margin, if you added 1 student, it's not technically gonna cost anything, but why wouldn't you just use that as like a basic element?
So they have a formula and I would ask you to invite Mr. Sullivan to walk you through that. They have a formula and an expectation how they do that number.
can we get
But you're
copies?
right, it's obviously tied to the capacity issue because at the margins, you know, it's not much, but you know.
Well, it goes
Or
like
is it?
this, it's you can add 30 students to the high school at no additional cost, maybe a few books. And at some point, if they're at the elementary level, you can add 1 or 2, and at some points you have to pay 2 teachers and now it's $190. So it's not always linear.
It's not, it depends on where it's getting built and
And I would imagine the age of the
depends on the
students
school that
is
that
important.
it's.
What school are they in?
Right.
I don't know, I would just encourage us to just do a simple calculation and take cause if you look at one of these, it's saying there's 13 students generated at 313 preliminary, and if it's 20 grand a student, that's well below the amount of tax, right? Not that that's the only thing that taxes are going to, but if you took 75% of it, cause that's 75% of our taxes, right? Like, we could probably do some simple calculations to just get a sense.
Yeah, so I think
Maybe that's as much for us as it is for you guys, but just something for us to think about.
well, we could also look at what the school's estimates are, so if we could get copies of those, that would be really helpful. Just for our planning to know what costs are coming down the road, but
Just quickly, yeah. So we use a student generation number for residential development. It's generally the Rutgers model, which is a planning model that's accepted by most planners at least. I think the school district abides by that, and I think they've got their own demographer who may tweak some variables, excuse me. This is essentially the most comprehensive study ever done from multifamily development, and those are kind of the ascribed numbers, but the reason I show it.
Based on like nationwide statistics, or is that?
No, it's a comprehensive study of every multifamily unit in New Jersey during the period.
Got it.
Again, lots of similarities. I show you this only to show you that the school district keeps comprehensive data of every new development and every subdivision and the number of students that they generate. So which is really fabulous data to have. We can kind of test that data. If you look at Aspen Green and Ridgetaka Mountain and Dorset Crossing, those are three of the most recent multifamily residential developments, and the number of school children they generate, the average is about 0.15 students per unit. The Rutgers general model is 0.14 per multifamily development. So we really
When you say per unit, it depends on the bedroom, right?
So it gets if you
Go back.
if you look, so it is, so there are different numbers that connect themselves to the number of bedrooms, the type of unit, whether it's attached or townhouse or multifamily unit, as well as bedrooms as well.
Does the Rutgers model adjust given the amount of time a building's been open? Does
it's interesting,
the population change over time?
So it's a great question, and the Rutgers study is so comprehensive that it has different analytical models and different multipliers for rent, income, old development versus new development. They all fall within similar margins, but the exact multiplier is a little bit different. So just to show you that when we do that math, it's fairly similar to the most kind of anticipated.
If I could, and I'm just curious, Chair, with your permission, if you look at more urban areas that have, a more built out public transport system, right? Bus system in a bigger city. Are those numbers higher for units? I mean, that's I always think when I haven't looked at the Rutgers study in a long time, but it was the entire state of New Jersey, right?
It was.
But I'm curious as to the difference between, say, a town like Simsbury, 30-some square miles, and a more urban area, right, where you would expect it that a similarly sized apartment would generate 2 kids instead of 1.2 kids or something like that.
My sense is that again those margins are in the percentage points,
right,
and not in 1 versus 2.
I just think anecdotally it's lower in a more rural community without good access to not an urban area. That's all.
And then finally, just in general population numbers, the census, the box to the top right is the town of Simsbury census number for our average household size. So that's households, all of our households at 2.56 people per household, and that is a number that has been in decline since the 70s. As we marry later, and when we marry, we have less children later. The biggest and fastest rising cohort for households in the country and in Connecticut is the single family, the single occupied unit. So a single living alone. It's remarkable. I think in 1980, the state of Connecticut, the 50% of our households were married couples. Today it's about 18%.
George, is that one of the things when we look at population enrollment trends, we'll see that our enrollment is not much more than it was 10 years ago.
Correct.
But we've had all this building, and this would be the answer. Yes, there's been all this building, but the people in the houses are less.
The data would suggest it's exactly the answer. We've added more units, but those households are smaller. Simple as that.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
Just flip back to no, one more, I think this one, I'm just. Yeah.
So this is the number of students in subdivisions or multifamily complexes as tracked by the school district.
So a lot of them are like double what they were when they first started. Is that just because of subsequent development?
I think that's a
or is
function of lease up. So the first in 2017, Carson Way might have had 12 houses. In 2018, it had 32 houses. In 2019, it had, as it kind of grew and built out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm asking because these numbers might make a lot of sense next year or 2 years, but we got to think way beyond that. So I don't want to I'm thinking about the economic development that we've got, and something that looks good in the first 3 years might be a lot more of a draw off of the town finances 10 years out.
Well, just keep in mind too, with respect to that point, that at the same time, the valuation is increasing. So even with a flat mill rate, you've got increased valuation and revals every 5 years. So yeah, the cost of the or even the number of students might go up, but so too would the value. And
You don't do the performance to see if they're at the same rates.
Well,
I don't know.
So I would just leave you with the population generation, just in general. Again, we use an average household size, and then planners like myself also use in terms of population generation based on the unit type.
Neil, before you were here, we were talking about you. So welcome, we have Neil Sullivan. I don't remember your formal title.
Assistant Superintendent for Administration.
We were just asking about, we're reviewing student generation rates and then what the cost is, because from the Board of Finance perspective, we're interested in what revenue they bring in, but it's an offset in cost. And we were wondering about sort of how you calculate that, what assumptions you use, and we were told you have those numbers, and we would be interested in you sharing those.
So we use a company, we send it off to a demographer. And the way we get our projections back is based on, they'll look at a cohort and then over time say how much do cohorts grow or decrease as they move through the school system. And the first calculation in kindergarten is based on how many births there were in the town 5 years before, and then they apply a multiplying factor to that. And then after that, what they're doing, the better ones that you pay more money for take into better account like new housing developments. But the one that our population is pretty stable. So we use NESDAQ, yeah. So
if you add a new student, like sometimes there's no cost, right? You have the book, the classroom, the lights on, and sometimes there's more. So how would we, us you, as we're thinking about financial planning, like we know, oh great, new 900,000 new revenue, oops, 35 students. What is the offset there? When we got the thing from Don from Goldman and York.
Yeah.
His analysis brought down the revenues by a third for school costs, but his numbers were high. He said use 12,000, but Montgomery County uses 500 because it really costs nothing to add a child, depending on the size of the district. So how do you think about that?
Take the projections when they come in. It's based on October 1st population every year. You send them off to the demographer, they give you projections for the next year. And then you're basically trying to apply staffing levels to what they're projecting. And so I agree, if the kid moves into town in the right neighborhood and it didn't cost me a new teacher, it's when a cohort starts to cost you a new teacher.
Right, so it kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that dangerous though? Because then you're gonna say, this didn't cost us anything, this didn't cost us anything, and then you're gonna go, oh, this kid cost us $80,000 because we hired a new teacher because it stepped over the line. It almost seems to me you wanna look at the expenses in the education system and say which ones are scalable and which ones aren't. And I would argue teachers aren't scalable because they might be scalable on the margin, but eventually you're gonna need a new classroom, you're gonna need a new teacher, so is it, and I just think about your average cost, which are like 19 or 20 grand, I wanna say per student, but like, is 80% of that 19 scalable? Is it 20%? Like that to me would be the way to go about this, and then use an average number and say, you know what, on average, it's gonna cost us 12 or 14 grand a kid. And sometimes it's gonna cost us 0 and sometimes it's gonna cost us 80, but we're just gonna use an average because otherwise we're gonna be playing this game that this development didn't cost us anything and this one cost us a lot, you know? That's my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, fair
Like,
enough.
being an actuary is trying to like think of the numbers and think of the averages, how we could do it, you know?
I mean, so what they did with Goldman in York is they took the 20,000 and they took out the cost for state and federal dollars that support that, and they got down to a number of about 12,000, which still seemed high to me because of obviously if you had 30 children at the high school, it's a lot more easy to absorb than at central school. So I'm not sure how they got that number, but to your point.
Well, only if you really felt though like your capacity was there at the
Right.
high school, right? And you said, look, we could take on 100 kids right now and we wouldn't add anything. It just seems hard to believe.
Yeah, so that's the question.
In
So
most
that's
of
why
the
we're trying-
elementary schools, you could take on kids and, you know, it's if they hit in the wrong grade and
Yeah.
I mean, one number we could use is the number that we could get reimbursed for Project Choice, cause that's what the state thinks it costs to educate a child, right? No, unrelated, okay. The additional cost.
Right.
So,
Yeah, the other thing I would just remind everybody is that when we get an application in that generates school kids, I'm gonna send it to Neil and his folks, and I'm gonna ask him to provide an analysis, and we're gonna use that and provide that information to, you know, to our commission decision makers. And that's I think that's the best promise I can make. And that analysis will take place.
we just did this because I was the one that's going up on Iron Horse that I was asking George about, and I just sent him an email last month saying, I need to know how many of these are 1 bedroom, how many are 2 bedroom, like that's the kind of thing that we're looking at.
no, that makes sense, and we have that you're anticipating about 13 students there, is that about right? Based on that.
Yeah, I would not expect a tremendous amount of students out of that complex.
So the public might be surprised, you think, oh, there's these huge costs, there are some, and it may reduce the revenues by, in some cases, like the Hartford, they showed reduced revenue by 1/3. But sometimes it's only 25%, sometimes it's 10, and your analysis does not include motor vehicles. So there are additional dollars that are coming in with that as well. One of the things I had a question that's most probably for Mark is how do apartments appreciate or depreciate over time? I know with personal property, they depreciate until they're replaced. How does that work with vacancy rate and rent? I mean,
think
do we
it
see
should-
the taxes going up or down, static?
I hate when you ask me really good questions. You know, I was having a similar conversation in front of the Economic Development Commission because as you know, if you look ahead to our reval coming up in a couple of years and you take a kind of a back of the envelope calculations, you start to worry because as vacancy rates increase on commercial, the reval trend obviously is really just a redistribution between commercial to residential, right? You're gonna probably find a reval that's pushing more of the tax burden to residential. And when that happens, it's pushing it both to apartments and to all the other single family homes or multifamily homes really. So you know, I can say personally have a growing concern about the shifting tax burdens coming up in the next reval, right? And so these types of analyses with our partners at the school on the education side and what George is doing really lay the groundwork for, I think, some tough calls. We don't have, and Wendy and I have had this conversation, you know, whether the land use approvers approve or deny, you know, that's their purview. But for us, for this board, for our team, budgeting and particularly capital planning is really tied to this and an understanding not just of what's in the pipeline, but what do we expect to happen and see when we do the reval.
I was just talking to Sarah Nielsen of Main Street Partnership, and
Yep.
she was alarmed. She thought our commercial vacancy rate was in the 25 to 30%.
Yeah, they signaled to us, to leadership here, their concern early, and then we did our own analysis of it and largely supported what Sarah and others and Rich Carrera, their team, was saying. And I credit them with drawing our attention to it because, you know, and I think I was somewhere and I got this question and, you know, putting as a positive spin on it, I wanna say, and for the benefit of the public, we do have time to make strategic changes now, right? Because you're looking at a couple of years down the road. And so in many respects, for us, and for Amy and Melissa and others working with the school on capital planning, it really isn't next year, as much as that's a problem, and we always worry about the year that we're facing. The bigger challenges, as you know, Chair, are 2, 3, 4, and 5 years out, especially when you hit that reval. It could be a bit of a tidal wave in terms of the impact, particularly on the residential side, right? So those are the discussions that we're having, and we've got to tailor our capital plan to what we can afford.
And how are you approaching sort of supporting big part of economic development is supporting workers, supporting current businesses, and then of course growing.
Yeah.
So how do you think about supporting businesses?
I think, you know, again, this is I don't wanna step into the policy shoe here, but I would say, as I've said, I made this comment to charter revision. When asked, I'll give you my honest answer, and that is that there needs to be more of a consensus, I think, across, say, the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, the zoning board, all the land use boards, in terms of, you know, we've got a wonderful P O C D, but you know, where the rubber meets the road is, let's just put it this way, you can't overemphasize open space and no development and say we're gonna vote down project after project, hypothetically, right? When we need to grow the grand list. And so what's the balancing, where do you find that balance between development and growth, which many view as bad words, and the need to grow the grand list? And when I say grow the grand list, I don't mean increase our taxes. I mean bring new developments in, and that's what we mean by that organic growth. So I can't answer the question really specifically, other than I think the work that we're doing is some of the best that's been done in the town. I really do feel that, and this board too, and our Board of Selectmen and Board of Education. I think you've got great minds looking at this, and I really feel like that, you know, we need to work together to come up with some solutions. So I know you and I, Chair, we don't agree on abatement, so I won't bring it up, but you know, development, I would just say, if I could tell one thing to all our folks, is every time we say development, can we please use the word strategic right in front of it? So that instead of just saying development and getting people's hair up on the back of their heads, that means, you know, affordable housing and you know, 10 story skyscrapers, which it doesn't. Just everybody get on the same page just in terms of what we're talking about. We're talking about strategic development. That's where is it? How much is it? What type is it? Is it mixed use? Is it this? Is it? And then you've got a better handle on what's the impact in terms of the number of students. Because if you don't know what's being developed, these numbers could be wildly off.
Well, and I think it's really important to toggle between the vision or the strategy or whatever you wanna call it and the numbers, because honestly, when you look at this page, as much as you're saying what multiplier would you use, this page would tell you to do tons of multifamily housing. The ratio is so much in your favor. If you were only cared about, I mean, it's so, like look at the ratio of students to total population, right? You're 0.15, right? I think it's 0.15 versus like a third basically with a single family unit. It's greater than a third.
And I would just add to that.
But just to finish the thought though, if all you did was that, you'd have a town with nothing but apartment buildings in it, right? So like somehow, somewhere, we've got to balance that with the vision to say, well, I also want a mix of my revenue coming from these places, because I'll put apartments in, but I don't wanna completely change the makeup of the town, right? So
realizing as well, the other point, the exclamation on that is that the ROI for developers is often higher with those types of developments as well.
for sure, so it's gonna be hard to say no to that.
It is gonna say no to that, which means that the idea strategically would be to counterbalance with incentives on the other side, right? And also, if you're in litigation, to find a mechanism to settle in a more strategic way, right? And this was my point to charter revision is that, and I don't wanna get into a planning mode, I'm just a finance person, but the bottom line is that if somebody comes to town and proposes 800 units, and the best we can do through litigation, settlement, and discussions through all the lawyers is reducing the number from 800 to 600 and calling it a victory. It's not a victory for the town because we didn't get what we want. We got less of what we don't want, but there is an opportunity somewhere, I think, and the chair and I have had some good discussions, Wendy and I have, George and I talk about it all the time, for strategic discussions about how do you get a developer to develop what you want. They come to us, they put the proposal in front of us, right?
Are there creative ways to more directly tie that type of development to eventual commercial development? 'Cause like let's face it, you bring in the apartments, you'd love to see
Mixed use.
10 other things happen on Iron Horse that are gonna make a lot of money and you know,
Retail
drive
with
with the leases and
apartments,
everything, right? But like,
I'd
are
let
there
George
creative
speak.
ways to drive that directly? So right
Yes.
now, you just almost wait for it to happen organically,
Right.
indirectly.
Well, the number one example would be the lots on Iron Horse that are owned by state DOT.
That's exactly what I think
The
about,
town
yeah.
separately has tried on a couple of occasions, aborted efforts, didn't quite get us there, but we're gonna renew those efforts and discussions with the state of Connecticut. But if we own them, George just said this to me when we were preparing for this meeting. The best answer is control our own destiny somehow, right? And I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but essentially, if you own it,
I said that.
It's a good quote,
George said it, if the town of Simsbury owns it, well, you know, and I won't mention Meadowwood, right? But what you put out is not necessarily a request for proposal, but a request for qualified or preferred developers. And you say, this is our vision, this is what we want, who can build it for us, right? But you have to control the property.
Right.
If you don't control the property, then you're at the disposal, the beck and call of, well, they're gonna go down to Hartford East or West or whatever it is, and they're gonna say, this is what you get. But my point is that shouldn't be the end of the discussion. There's gotta be a way to say, yeah, we don't want that, but this is what we want.
So one of the things we did many years ago was a charrette, and then
Yes.
we followed up with a marketing study, and I think the marketing study was done in 2015, so that's quite a bit of ways ago.
It was a
I know.
great job. I think it needs to be refreshed and
Should,
updated.
I mean, I know George is doing great work in Terrafil, but perhaps it's time to revisit the center because that we
Yeah,
can do.
the center's an interesting example of maybe what could have been, which is you did this great charrette and quite frankly, the only thing that has been built, the only thing in the 15 years is the luminary, and that's not even hardly in the center.
I would say Andes, that
Right.
was a major.
Sure, but
Right.
by and large, it attracted no additional development.
I think
And there are
one-
reasons for that,
One of the recommendations, Chair, as you know, from the Housing Policy Advisory Group that the Board of Selectmen convened was the Iron Horse lots, and that was what stirred the charrette back in
Yeah, that-
2015. And
that was certainly in there.
you-
And also to point you towards Metro Beast, which was a direct result of the charrette.
Sure.
That as well, so there were some, but I agree, there's an opportunity there to do that. One of the things OPM just came out with their grand list comparison of municipalities, and we now have 7% of our grand list from apartments compared to Glastonbury and Farmington, which are 2% and 3%, and Avon 0. So as we think about, do we ever think about regionally, like why are they all in Simsbury? Why are we spreading them around? I mean, what kind of, do we do sort of regional economic planning?
I haven't had the capacity to do it. I think I'm trained and qualified to do it, but in all honesty, Chair, I haven't had.
Well, you've only been here 2 years.
I haven't had the time to do it, but you and I talked about getting some outside help to help was your suggestion, and we are looking at that. In fact, I wanna bring that up to the Board of Selectmen over the next month or two, so.
George, sorry, we kind of got off.
Yeah, we did.
Sorry.
But I mean, in the last 20 minutes, the one thing that I think resonated with me was that you said there's 30 to 40% vacancy. And then you
Well,
talked a lot about it, but I don't know, like when you talk about development, are you talking about building or are you talking about finding ways to fill those vacancies?
I didn't say that. Main Street Partnership has sounded an alert, our colleagues there who.
You said that your numbers.
I did it back of the envelope and confirmed their concern, not their numbers, but their numbers are, and I don't wanna speak for them, but I understand them to be in terms of square footage. not in terms of the percent of commercial buildings per se. But we have some big buildings that, is that right, George? So, I don't wanna,
You're missing the spirit of my question.
oh, I'm sorry.
There are vacancies that are higher than we would like.
Yeah.
Regardless of how we're measuring them. Are we talking about ways to mitigate that, and is that also what you call development?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, because if you can get them occupied, their valuation won't decline. So you're not adding to the grand list per se,
You're maintaining.
but you're maintaining what you expect otherwise would be a problem. So yes, we are, the Economic Development Commission and George and I and our team and Main Street are all looking at that. And that includes some direct outreach to those 12 property owners that represent the biggest, And again, we don't have, I will say, we don't have tools, we don't have arrows quiver in our quiver. What are we gonna say to them when we call them, Chair? Say, what do you-
Well, so there have been members of the public who have portrayed my position on abatements, which are not accurate. My position on an abatement is following the best practice of the Lincoln Land Institute. You offer an abatement to get someone to do something that they wouldn't otherwise have done. You don't do it as a gift. If they were gonna do it anyway, don't give them the abatement. It's not an abatement, it's a gift. So you use it, which is what we did, and I thought it was a good use of the abatement for the Metro Beast. Because they were gonna tear it down, we gave them abatement because they could not renovate it. It was so expensive to maintain the historic building. And so that preserved a key entry asset to the community, and that was a good use of an abatement. So I'm not against it, I'm just against it when we give it to people who are already gonna build or come.
I think if we just, it's kind of like the word development, if we used the word strategic before it, we'd probably find that we agree. Strategic use of abatements, it sounds like we totally agree. The haphazard, what has happened across the country over the years that generated that report that you cite, absolutely true. But they were hardly strategic abatements, they were people that didn't know what they were doing and just did it so that they could, raise the flag and say, look, we got such and such here, and then the jobs never materialized in the first place. Half of those abatements around the country were tied not to grand list growth, but to employment and job, that's, and we would love to see that in Simsbury, but what we're really focused on is growing the grand list and that maintaining the valuation of our current commercial properties and maybe getting some new ones.
George, why don't you?
I think I'm done.
Good job.
You have no more
But
that you want?
no, I don't. I would just take us back to the beginning, which is what we tried to do with this was just to combine development data, what's being built in our community, when is it being built, when do we expect it to be built, with assumptions on assessed value. That was the driver and the point of departure. So if there are other things that you think that would be helpful, data that's not on this, we could certainly work as a team to get it and to put it together. But this was I think a good first effort for us to kind of expand what would otherwise be, just an approach on what's being built in our community.
I guess one thing I would be interested in is seeing motor vehicle estimates, because we're coming up, they're not insubstantial. And you mentioned square footage was on here, and where am I seeing square footage?
It's listed in the details for some of them.
Yeah, so we're known in the details.
Okay. Yeah, because that's really helpful to sort of understand that. But first of all, thank you for your efforts, we appreciate whatever.
And sure, we're gonna be maintaining this, so again, it's maybe quarterly or a couple times a year, we're happy to get it to you if anybody'd like to see it and maintaining it moving forward. We'll try to roll in motor vehicle to it too, we didn't have time to.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, I don't know what the average we just did, looked like between 500 and 1,000 per vehicle.
Yeah.
But that can add up if you, based on the.
Well, in the spirit of that though, on the good side, to counterbalance that, do you need to add more than just students here? Cause this is focusing obviously on the cost of education. You have to think about additional police staff, you have to think about other things as well to load it up, not to overdo it, those might be pennies on the dollar, I have no idea.
That's harder because I don't know whether we have all those metrics available.
One we are monitoring is our 911 and public safety dispatch.
Right.
I'll just mention that now, I've had conversations with the chief. And while we're doing our best to hold the line, we feel, and I don't wanna speak for him, but that those numbers are potentially getting up there so that you could be looking at the need to add a public safety dispatch person. That's a one FTE sort of thing that, you know, has its costs as the population grows and ages as well.
In 2017, the Board of Finance did offer to fund a fiscal impact analysis, data system for you guys. It was not taken up on, but there are some good data, especially now with AI. If there is something you guys,
It's out there.
I mean, a lot of it goes to the finance department, maybe more a question for Amy to help do her long-term projections, but there are systems out there and I would to evaluate whether that would be.
We certainly won't be afraid to ask for support for some of that, those outside resources.
Yeah, those general level of service numbers for total acreage of fields necessary for population, number of police officers, that level of service data is helpful and it'd be nice to do a study that kind of.
And there are
did some of that.
systems out there where you can literally, they're designed for internal use of towns, so it might be worth relooking at that at some
Talk about
point. Cause I think the better data we have, the better decisions you can make, the schools can make. Neil, is there anything you think we should be thinking about or be aware of from a fiscal planning standpoint?
I mean, given the timing of projects, we typically, once we know one has been greenlit, we have enough time to make the adjustments we need to make. So I'm not terribly concerned, and these apartment projects
They're not overwhelming.
are
right?
not overwhelming, right? That's the data that's just, they bring less kids than
You would
single
think.
family housing.
Yeah, that's sort of the fascinating
I mean,
piece.
you build a big one, Ridge at Talcott Mountain, that's got a lot of kids in it. Because there's 300 units.
Well, a lot of kids per does it break the 0.15 rule, or is it just that, are you saying just on an absolute basis, there's just
When you just add them all up, there's about 50 kids in there.
It's like, I think it's
Absolutely.
there, it's like 0.21,
so a little bit higher than the,
a little bit higher. Cause there's a lot of 2 bedrooms, there's half of them are townhouses, so that again, that mix influences and informs the number generation, yeah.
What is the Simsbury Commons that might add 600?
So that is to be
That already
to be
has
clear,
been
that
done.
is in a potential project
That's one that's
column that where the developer came in at Simsbury Commons and gave a presentation to the zoning commission. It would be to convert some of the retail capacity at Simsbury Commons from retail space to multifamily.
and is the Ridge at Talcott South, what is that?
That is what we call Hartford South, that's the Silverman
Same
project
thing.
that is in litigation.
Okay, and that's the one that's gone from 430 to about 250.
Yeah, so I made an assumption there, assuming that we prevail, that we certainly expect development there. We always expected development in that location, and that was kind of the genesis of the lawsuit, which is the zoning commission denied the application because there wasn't enough mixing of uses. It was almost wholly 100% multifamily project, and the zoning commission expected and asked for a heavier mixed use component, which they didn't. So I went and assumed that perhaps if we could reach consensus with the particular owner, that it would look something like that.
Okay. And Simsbury Commons over by Bushy Hill, is that still a possibility?
Oh, that's what I was answering with the changeover of the retail space.
Oh, okay.
What did you ask? Did I mishear
Talcott
you?
South, yeah, I'd asked about the one on the back page, Simsbury Commons for 693, is that
Yeah,
already-
Simsbury Commons, that's
Okay.
so that's the change of the retail space. It's out, near the movie theater, and
Oh, that's the one,
that's the space.
that could be 700 out by the movie theater?
Well, again,
No idea.
I have no idea what that unit mix looks like, so that uses the average household size.
Oh, okay,
No idea what that looks like.
that's not even in the pipeline yet, that's still a
Well,
concept.
I mean, I think the developer and owner are discussing those options and doing pro formas and those kinds of things, but it has not come to us.
And who is representing us in the Silverman lawsuit?
Ken Slater from
Is that Pullman?
I can't think of his name.
It's not.
No, it's not Paul.
We'll get back to you.
Yeah, Ken Slater.
My point is, it's not our regular council because there was a conflict, is that right?
That's correct.
Do we get a discount on our annual fee because of that?
No.
That might be something to have a conversation with going forward. Any other questions? You wanna recognize, we have Jeff Tyndall, also Chair of the Board of Ed, who walked in a little bit late, didn't get a chance to introduce you as well, so add you to the mix.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Alright,
guys.
thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anytime.
This is, we like the rainbow chart too. We'll now move on to the finance director report. I just wanted to start, while these are not finalized number, I did wanna congratulate Amy and Mark. I thought you guys did a really good job managing the budget. You're ending the year with 2% revenue surplus, and Mark, you did a great job with your budget, only 2% returning to the town, which means it was well budgeted. So I just wanna recognize the work that went into that and to get us to those numbers. Those are considered reasonable margins of error. I'm very pleased with how they resulted. We understand from Amy that the Board of Ed is gonna come on the budget using the non-lapsing fund, so everything's really looking very, very positive unless something has changed.
No, everything's positive. Actually, they're coming in within budget without using non-lapsing.
Without?
Without using non-lapsing.
And what changed there to do that?
So more to come on that. When there's a couple expenditures that I need to look at that could sway one way or the other. But there's enough cushion there where we should be able to come in within budget. So there was some salary savings. There was, I think special ed came in better than anticipated with the excess cost funding. And I think those were the two main drivers. But I will pull the detail on that when I actually go through year end and let you know what changed specifically.
We'll get those final numbers in, we're anticipating those in October at this point.
Yes. Yeah, they'll go to the Board of Selectmen September 23rd.
Whatever that second meeting
The
is.
second meeting in September, and then you'll have it in October.
And Chair, I think our success on the town side this year will also inform our budgeting for next year. So there were some key things there which you and I can talk about offline. It's so, we're feeling a little good tonight.
You should feel good. I'm very, very pleased when I saw the way these numbers ended. I think that's good for our AAA bond rating. Very well done.
Thank
So Amy, why don't you walk us through what you have?
Sure. So I kept the fiscal year 25 information on the finance director's report just for like one last time since we were closing out July. The approved supplemental appropriations, there's no change there. I added the fiscal year 26, nothing to date. You'll see that on page 2, I updated the tax abatement information for the impact for fiscal year 26. And then the final applications right below that for our grants and awards. Everything has been noted as awarded or denied with the exception of the Bulletproof Vest grant. That grant has not yet opened yet, so that one will be pending going into fiscal year 26.
And do you need any supplemental appropriations? I know we had talked about doing them if they're under 20,000 at the end of the year. So just let us know if you need any.
It'll be included as part of the year-end cleanup.
Cybersecurity was denied?
Yes.
Do you know
That
why?
makes a lot of sense.
I do not know why. I'm not even sure if they gave us a reason why, but the state grant that we applied for did not move us forward. The fiscal year 26 grant applications and awards, we have a few to start off the year. There has been one update since I did this, that last grant at the bottom there, the Moving for Better Balance grant that was awarded since I wrote this packet. So a quick update there. You'll see that the police department added a few savings initiatives coming down for fiscal year 26 based on their anticipated couple of their grants and then some uniform cleaning savings that they had. And then the change over in their cruisers from gas to hybrid. The chief did a nice little graph for you on the gasoline usage related to that.
New cars they're buying are now hybrids. They didn't change anything, they just bought hybrid.
Moving down to page 4 on the pooled investments, you'll have the numbers as of June 30th, 2025. And then right below that, you have your updated balances as of July 31, 2025. Just a quick update here. We did receive last week or the week before some CD rates from Liberty Bank. So we will be investing in those within the next week or two. We're just finalizing our cash flow analysis. So for a 3-month CD, it's locked in at 4.29, and then a 6-month CD will be 4.07, which is great because if you recall for fiscal year 26, we budgeted our interest rate at 3.75.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So you're saying we would like ladder those out again with the
Right.
CDs? Okay, awesome. And are those like locked in at this point, or you're already invested, or?
The rate is locked in, we just need to get them the information and
Excellent.
send it over.
All right.
Yep.
Amy, we have a lot of money in Liberty Money Market, FDIC. Do we need to spread that, or is that just not realistic because of cash flow?
And you're thinking like diversify it in case something bad happened with that fund?
Yeah, well, I'm reading about the 1830s.
Yeah,
I believe money market funds are protected, right? Like they are designed to not break the dollar, so to speak, that you have full liquidity at all times and you should not ever lose principal. But I don't know how strong that is relative to FDIC and everything else.
Yeah.
Up to what level is that?
I think it's massive because institutions invest, like us, but even much larger, invest in money markets. I'm not an expert on this, but you
Yeah,
could
no,
probably
you're
do some research on this to find
Yeah,
out.
and we can reach out to our bank rep too. I know we had this conversation with Liberty Bank at one point, the money market versus stiff, and she did provide some reassurance, and she actually gave me some documents which I can try to dig up and forward along. But the FDIC, I think the limit is like 250,000 or something. It's super low, so we would never be able to meet that. So Liberty Bank did provide some assurance related to our fund, so I can send that along. And then on the preliminary financial results, did you want me to go through that, or did you just give like the overview and?
Why don't you just give us the high level?
Okay.
Before you do that, I just wanna say to members of the public, we're the Board of Finance, so we use very large numbers that to me would be overwhelming. When you hear you had a surplus of over $2 million, you think, but when you hear it was actually only 2% and you think about how you budget your personal budget, that's considered a really safe margin of error. You don't wanna ever come in under budget where you're in a deficit because that impacts your rating agency, which then costs the town money in later years. If we get a rating degradation, it comes way down. So when we're talking big numbers, I just want to draw your attention back to the percent. 2%, that's what OPM says is a reasonable margin of error. That's what we came in at. Massachusetts says a reasonable margin of error is 3 to 5%. Obviously, it's up to this board is what we feel comfortable with, but we've made great progress in getting that down. At one point, we were a little over 3, which was higher than where we wanted to be. Town did a great job getting that down. Mark did a great job getting his budget down. He came in with 7% savings one year. That was too much for us, so we got that down to 2. So I think we've made tremendous progress. I think we're where we need to be so that we don't lose our rating grade and so that we have seed money for next year's budget that we don't have to tax for. So it's all part of a closed system and it generates through itself. All right, so Amy, why don't you go through?
So on page 7, you'll see the budgeted revenues against the actuals that are year-end projections that are not final, I should say. Once we do the closeout entries, we'll give the final numbers, but these are projected to be where we're going to land. So you'll see the variance there, which Lisa previously noted we're about just shy of 2.6 million to the good. I won't reiterate everything else I've said over the last 3 quarters, but a lot of that is from our tax department, our building department, our investment income, and then we also had a large increase related to our Board of Education tuition line item.
And interest income came in.
Right, finance, yep. The investment income, yeah. And then, so I have noted here that just in comparison to my estimates for the 3rd quarter, I had calculated about 2.4 in excess revenues, so we're coming in about 2.6, so a couple $100,000 better than anticipated.
But a good estimate from the last quarter, so thank you.
And then moving on to page 10 for the expenditures. You'll see on the very bottom there that our expenditures are anticipated to come in under budget by just shy of $600,000. This is related to the town only, as my estimates in there for the Board of Education are coming in flat. So based on that, my estimates in the 3rd quarter for the town portion were about $526,000 under budget. And again, we're landing around $599, so pretty good estimates there related to the 3rd quarter in comparison. With those two changes in the budget, the anticipated surplus is estimated to be about $3.1 million by the time we actually close out the books at the end of September.
That's about 2.5% variance, right? So well within reasonable. Mark, I did have one question for you, but before we get to that, Amy, what you have listed here is the fiscal year 2025 amended budget.
Yes.
So the budget passed by the public is slightly different. If this were what we'll call at our request, we asked to do the mid-year transfers of contingency, and that was done in February. So just going forward, can we do an original budget column too?
Sure.
Similar to the change that we're gonna be seeing with GASB, make those consistent. And then Mark, on IT, can you give us a status update on where we are with the website? Cause it's showing that money wasn't spent here, so I just wanna see.
We're on track to have a beta test version live probably November 1.
When was that contract signed?
About 8 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. We had to go back out to bid. You remember there was a bit of a history here with getting funding approval, so.
So was it signed in June?
Yeah, or maybe the end of May or something like that, yeah. We just had our second or possibly third project meeting yesterday. Wendy was able to join us. And I'll be updating the Board of Selectmen with a little bit more detail at their meeting of September 8th. But for this board, I think that you could look at preliminary rollout in November. It might be a little earlier than that.
The reason why I'm asking is just not seeing it spent here, I'm anticipating an encumbrance coming up.
We're right, but just to be clear, we're well underfunded. We're not gonna spend a nickel more, and we should be.
Okay, so when we see that money here, that's not true savings, that's gonna be carried forward as
That'll
an
be one of the
encumbrance.
year-end adjustments.
It'll be a year-end adjustment.
Do we have an idea yet how many encumbrances we're looking at?
I can
So-
give you a broad range, probably around $100,000. I think BOE is pretty set right now, around 50, and then town's about 180, but that'll come down, so if I were to guess, around 100,000.
Again, well done, nice job. Okay.
Moving on to the July report, as you can see, if you look through the notes column, or a lot of it is just a timing of payments. But if you look at page, I lost my page numbers. Oh, page 11, I just wanted to point out on the revenue side, the tax department. So, just kind of ironically, we are progressing at the same pace as we were, the same at this time last year. So the percent received to date, 49.81%, after our first major collection, right in line with where we were last year, 49.81%.
Can you get any feedback on the motor vehicle change, or are people complaining with that, or?
Just in passing, I have talked about it with the assessor's office and then heard people talk at the assessor's office residents when they come in. There are complaints about the changes in the motor vehicle. I don't think that there's a wide understanding out there that the legislation changed, and people coming in concerned that they can't sell their vehicle for the assessed value. So there has been a bit of an education from our assessor's office to residents when they come in.
We've gotten a few email as well.
And then on the expenditure side, page 15, pretty much right in line where we were last year. You can see again, just timing of payments, the July activity, just so early in the year. But about 4.81% spent as of the end of July compared to the 4.27 at the end of last year. So right in line, with each other. And again, just related to the timing of the payments is mostly your variance. Any other questions on that I can answer?
A small one, a nit, but one that I follow. The 69,000 that you did not get for cybersecurity, was that something you thought you could do without, or is that 69,000 been filled from some of the economies you've been making in other places?
So that I believe was something that they were gonna do above and beyond what was in our budget. There was a lot of likelihood from our IT director that we weren't gonna get it. So he kind of took his shot and tried to see if we could get it, but I don't remember specifically what the projects were. I think this one was
But it was not a must-do for the
No.
cybersecurity program, okay?
No.
No questions on? Mark, I'll open it up to you. I think you did a communication on Two Farms Village. I know when we passed it, the hope was we'd have it ready to go in September. Can you talk about sort of the status, where we are in the timeline?
Yeah, Chair, thanks for that. I think the good news is that it's moving along. I was over there today and trucks are in the front yard and getting work done and it's progressing. Just for the benefit of the public, I remind everybody watching that this transaction is a two-part, two phases, where the owner, current owner, former owner, was required under the contract to do a certain amount of work, what we call phase one. That work is underway. Then there'll be the closing, and then the town will step in and do phase two. Because it took some time to get the that part of the contract finalized, it seemed, I think, to Mr. Gerard's side of the equation, Chair, that the cost being the cost estimates provided by vendors was changing literally weekly, and it was just a real bear to get with the attorneys involved in that final piece of getting this contract done. Took longer than we thought. So the delay that we face now was caused by two things. One, the delay in getting the actual contract worked out, and then beyond that, there were delays with Mr. Gerard getting the contractors out there and working, right? So what we've tried to do, and I want to credit Tom Roy, our colleagues on the school side, for kind of working this out, is the original plan was he does all phase one, we close, we do phase two. With Tom's help, we're starting to roll on phase two even before the closing. Permits have been pulled and filed, and all of that work is on track. So what you see is the memo. I think you've got that was also provided to the Board of Selectmen at their last meeting, so everybody's on the same page. I don't expect any further challenges. I do know, and I can say, sort of without detailing the contractors, I can say that the way we structured this has definitely saved the town significant money just in the way we framed this deal. And so I sit here before you tonight glad that we did it that way, and I would urge everybody who's obviously we're impatient to get it up and running, that the savings, if we were to go back to those original analyses that Amy and Katie provided when this board and the Board of Selectmen approved it, and you looked at those numbers today, I think you'd be very happy. So we know we're behind, and they're trying to pick up the pace. And I don't know if on the school side you want to add anything, but I know you want to get in.
We want to get in.
We want to get in. Yes.
If it's not for the start of the year, we're gonna stay in the space we're in and we'll go when it's ready.
When you say start of the year, start of
Next week.
Yeah, I say you don't have much time.
5 days.
Is there any chance of that?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah.
But halfway.
Is the drop like is there a bright line where you step over it and it becomes a financial problem that we went too far, or Like what would you say? Is it Jan 1? Is it?
Like, I guess what I don't know is what, and I defer to our colleagues, is it possible to go in mid-year or is this something? Okay, so that's what I think happens is that they get in mid-year. It's not a full year. I don't wanna speak for them, and I'm not the engineer or the contractor, but my guess is that based on what Mr. Roy is telling me, that they're gonna get in 5-6 months later than they wanted to. So, and I don't anticipate further issues that would delay it much beyond that right now, so.
Great. Thank you for that. If you could just update us periodically on
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
that'd be great. Okay. Any other questions on Amy's budget?
No, I'm here.
Again, really congratulations on the 2025 and let's hope 2026 goes as well.
So all our department heads, Chair,
Well,
everybody
thank you guys for doing that. We'll give you some seed money in your non-lapsing fund that doesn't have to be tapped, so that's great. All right, we are now moving on to budget planning discussion. Amy, could you pull up the document just so that the public can start following along with us? This I have, just for members of the public, I did preview these documents with the first selectman and the chair of the Board of Ed. Okay,
Do you want the calendar or the guidance up
let's
first?
go with the other stuff, cause the calendar we can look at later.
Okay.
You could just make that big, that would be great. What I did is, and I think I previewed this with most board members here as well. I pulled together all the factors that we look at so that we can sort of see where we are as a board and what we wanna give guidance on, what we view as not really a guidance thing, but an indicator, something we're gonna track. Make sure everybody's comfortable with the policies, which policies do we wanna relook at, which need to be relooked at actually probably last month, but no later than September if we're gonna do any adjustments, cause it has been our position for many, many years that we don't adjust policy mid-budget because we wanna spend more in the middle of the budget process when there's no time to do a thorough evaluation. Alright, so mill rate, this is draft, some things I just put in there. This is not something to panic over, but our goal is always a zero tax increase. We have we wanna get, I think our board has said in the past, we'd like to prioritize Simsbury's mill rate to get it more competitive with our peer towns of Glastonbury, Farmington, Avon, and some of our other peers. We are quite a bit higher, pay $2,000 more a year than Farmington, $1,000 more a year than Avon. But I wanted to get folks sort of general goal there. What do they think about the mill rate? Is that consistent? What I tried to put down were things that I've heard this board say, but it's possible I got some of this wrong. So let's start with the mill rate. How do people feel about the mill rate? It's too soon. We'll obviously give our guidance in December, but I just wanna get an initial thing. Are we gonna give guidance on the mill rate or just on the budgets? And the mill rate will be one of our indicators.
Amount of increase, I think, is the core of the thing. I mean, long term, our mill rate, we'd like to have our long-term mill rate more in sync with Farmington, Avon, Glastonbury, and other towns, agreed. For this coming year, I think it's how much the increase would be. To me, that would be the key, my key concern.
The increase in, when you say
Over
mill rate
last year.
taxes, yeah.
With the goal of, just to expand on that, cause I think I'm agreeing with you, of having that target be something that's making up ground relative to other towns essentially. Or at least what our guess is making up ground, right?
That would be
Which means
the
it's gotta
target.
be below inflation, or having 0 on here, I don't think is a bad target. It's probably, the target should be somewhere between 0 and inflation minus X, right?
I mean, so that's sort of the general, we have generally as a board always tried to keep the tax increase below the cost of living adjustment because of seniors living on fixed income have to live within their budget. We should too. It goes with sort of the theory you budget for, will be judged on how we treat the least among us. So that can be one of the things we can look at. Sometimes we have done the rate of inflation. I think right now we're gonna be in a strange position where COLA may come in at 2.5 and the rate of inflation watching the tariffs may come in at 2.7. So that'll be one of the points of discussion, you know, what is a reasonable tax increase? And then how do we compare with our neighboring things? So maybe our neighboring things is really a point of comparison number as opposed to the target. I mean, we're gonna always be mindful, cause the bigger that gap gets, we just heard from Mark, the vacancy rate starts to increase, businesses, it's harder to get them in, so we have to be mindful of that, or we're gonna see a huge shift to the residential property tax in the next 2 years.
Agree. I just don't wanna tie us too far in. The theory, these other towns is a good goal. All the COLA, the COLA increase and the rate of inflation increase. And the third factor are the lumpy things that are unexpected to come along for the good and for the bad.
Right.
And I mean, at this point, it's hard, I think, to be predictive. I think these are all worthwhile goals, but there's every time I've sat in here, there's something that's been in that budget that we hadn't foreseen for the good or for the bad, and we just
So maybe these are indicators that we look at and they aren't necessarily guidance.
That's the agenda, but
Right.
we've been through this before. When
Right.
it comes down to real hard numbers, there are always unforeseen things that come up on both sides of the ledger that we just gotta, I don't wanna lock us into saying this is the theory and the algorithm
No,
we're gonna proceed with.
for sure. I mean, we'll give guidance on the budget numbers in December as we've always done in the past, but we weigh what we think we can afford, but then we have to hear about the needs and then it's a balance and
But I
it's a
do
dance.
agree with you that we need to give that guidance because it's worked when we do give that guidance.
Right.
And our other two boards, which are represented here tonight, have been responsive to that. I mean, I gotta give them credit. They've gone back and have given up things they really wanted to do when that guidance has been given, so it's worked in the past.
It's guidance as part of communication.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard us say zero.
I have said that every year. The goal is always 0. We never get there.
That's what I mean about the difference between
Yeah.
what we'd kind of like to do and what we can expect realistically. And the rapport realistically has been really good, and so I think that's got
Right.
to be repeated.
So these are things we're gonna look at as indicators as we go through the process and sort of see where we are at that. I did put in their realistic grand list numbers. We just got a great explanation of how they're doing their grand list estimates, so I thought that was very helpful. That's a standard request. Some towns do not do realistic grand list estimates because it makes their budgets easier. We've done a great job with that, and I expect that to continue. At the tri-board, we generally give budget increase guidance, that we do not give it as a cap because we have not yet heard from the other boards as to what your needs are in that but it's the first sort of throwing of the gauntlet, the beginning of the conversation, this is what we think we can hear, then we get back from the needs, then we readjust our revenues. So it becomes the first thing, and that's always standard, so we would do that. For the debt service, we would use the actual number we get from Amy. And for revenues, we'll continue, Amy's done a great job using conservative revenues, of which we then probe and ask about assumptions, but I think that is it has served us well. It's enabled us to end not in a deficit and preserve our AAA bond rating. It's given us some money to then fund capital. Without that money to fund capital, we would be taxing for capital, so it's all part of a closed system. One of the things I just want to confirm from our board is, are we still comfortable with the guidance from our consultant, who said if health reserves exceed 25%, the town should use no more than a third of the balance above 25%. That's what our consultant advised. People still comfortable with that?
I would say so.
Okay.
Amy, what do you think about that one? I feel like you're the closest to the numbers. I mean, to me, it always feels like it allows you to use a good chunk of it, but never get ahead of yourself, so it feels like a good rule of thumb.
I would agree.
Okay, so we'll continue with that. This board had already pre-approved $700,000 from capital reserves. indicated our intent to offset the debt service, but we would actually have to vote on it this year. I'm assuming that has not changed for folks. Amy may come with us with an adjustment to 800, but whatever that number is. Are people still comfortable with the debt service plan that we had? Okay. Are people still comfortable with the 98.5? That is our current policy tax collection assumption rate. Just for members of the public, that varies wildly. 1 year, that was 100,000 extra revenue. 1 year, it was over $1 million. We generally hit about 600,000. Again, the state uses 98.75%. We've used this for, 20 to 30 years to great effect. I'm not in favor of changing it, but I did wanna get the board's feeling if anyone disagrees.
I do not disagree, I agree.
I'm comfortable with it. Don't we tie something to it as well? Don't we view that's slightly conservative, and that conservatism at times, I feel like it comes up and we say, yeah, but we would probably cover it because we'll probably get to 99% or whatever.
Yes.
It's almost like if we changed it, other things would have to change as well, I think, in
Exactly.
the process, so, yeah, I think it's fine.
There are times when we've been glad it was there.
Yes, exactly. But it's not grossly conservative either.
No, it's not. I mean, it's
Unexpected expense.
considered a best practice in many
Yeah.
municipalities across the nation. Use the governor's municipal numbers to estimate state aid. Obviously, we get some numbers, we hear crazy rumors during the legislative process, but the only numbers we can really use are the governor's budget. Are we still comfortable with doing that unless something definitively comes up? Okay, we get those in February. Incorporate all GFOA distinguished budget award standards for transparency and public accountability. We've asked for that. I know maybe this is the 7th year in a row we're making progress towards that, but we'll continue to ask that we continue to make progress toward that goal. At this point, I know Avon, Glastonbury, Cheshire, Tolland, and then there's probably maybe 20 towns in Connecticut. We do meet that standard, and so I would like to see Simsbury. We are Simsbury, let's get there. And to the extent we can move that along faster, that would be great. Financial policies, it has always been our position that we are compliant with all financial policies. Accounting standards of the charter goes without saying, is that correct? Okay. Here's one I put in here, and this, I think we don't make the call yet, but the numbers I'm seeing right now, this is gonna be a really tough budget year. Current economic conditions will make it difficult just to maintain level services. For any new programming, we request a communication of need, clear data and benefit analysis, and identify any new revenues or cost savings you're able to fund this programming with. I don't know if we're gonna need to make that statement, but this might be a year when we do need to make that statement. So I put that there for your consideration. Other towns put that in as a standard communication. I just wanted to get people's thoughts there on what you're hearing. I have made a number of calls just recent years, and I'm getting tremendous feedback that taxes are an issue. I've had a few people yell at me. I think people are starting to feel the pinch of what's going on out there, watching the broad national sentiment out there. I think the motor vehicle change did come as a shock to a number of people, and they've been very vocal about that. But what are you guys hearing? What is your sense? I've never seen it like this, my sense.
I think you tend to receive more traffic about this than other board members do because you're the chair. I hear you, let's just continue to be aware of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would just ask both boards to really monitor your vacancy rate. This is a year to say, do I need to fill this position? For next year, we would obviously not like to be in a position where we have to lay off people. We're gonna be monitoring what happens with tariffs. We are now starting to feel the effects of those. We expect those to continue unless they don't. Okay. Retirement ADCs, our position has always been, although I don't think it's actually written in our policy, to fully fund the ADCs as recommended by our actuary. We've never written it down because we always just do it, but perhaps we should write that one down. I just wanna make sure people are still, Amy, can you confirm, I forgot to ask in 2025, did we make our ADCs? Yes, we did. Okay. We use the retirement investment assumption of 6.5%. People still comfortable with that? The OPEB ADC, we still fully fund the ARC, or the annually determined contribution, but we do it. We're gonna be looking at perhaps implementing the trust fund as a way to service the OPEB going forward. We will get that analysis in December. Amy has offered to do a presentation on how we fund it along with our actuary, so we'll get that analysis as to whether it saves money or costs more money, but that's an evaluation we should do. It's about 25 million sitting there. At some point, we should be drawing it down to make sure that we're using it appropriately. So we'll get that analysis done. Thank Amy for her work on that, and we look forward to that presentation in December. Debt service still less than 8%. That was meant to be temporary, and we wanted to get it back to 7%. The goal is to decrease borrowing, target debt service in the out years below 7%. That was originally the goal. I wanted to just see if folks feel that way. To me, with interest rates where they are, this is not the time to borrow. You borrow when interest rates are low. So I just wanted to get a sense there on what people are thinking. It is currently 8%. We could just keep it at that. Increase the goal in the out years to get that below 7%. The way we are doing that is our current guidance, which has not changed from last year, was 5 million every year, 10 million every 2 years. I'm comfortable with keeping it there, but I wanted to get a sense from the board where you guys are.
Well, look, these are the guys right in front of us here. I mean, it's the next school. That's
Other than the school, other
Well-
than a major, a school.
okay, but that's the elephant in the room.
It is the elephant in the room. So I have something to say on that.
Please.
One of the things I had talked with Amy about, and I may have drafted Art Wallace, I might have said, I'm sure he'll volunteer to do this before he agreed to do this. But working with Amy in the next few weeks, sort of on a fact-finding mission to sort of refine our modeling to look at scenarios of how we could fund a major school project or major construction project, whether it's school or something else, a major capital project. When we could do that, when it would make sense, what the impact would be on the citizens, what the capacity is of our citizens to do that. To Mark's point, if we decide we wanna do that sooner than we think it is affordable from our perspective, would we do a survey and ask the public? You know, how would we approach that sort of situation? So what we would do is meet with Amy, this would be an Excel meeting, go through different modeling, bring the Excel back to this board, do it with the full board, but just a way to sort of knock out the numbers and do the modeling, maybe get Barry on the call if needed. He's our advisor on so if that becomes necessary, we could then get it all ready so that we would have a working model that we can evaluate with a few scenarios. And I know
Well, that what you just said, just with a few scenarios, I think that's critical.
of course,
That, I mean, we've gotta have some serious scenarios with consequences. You can't just ask what do people want, what do they
Oh,
want?
no, for sure.
Obviously, people just want the least expense that is necessary. We gotta deliver those scenarios. I think that's a key point.
I know I talking with Jeff and with Matt Curtis, I know they are working on really evaluating their capital plan and trying to get some hard numbers so that we'll have an idea of what we're really talking about. The reimbursement rates right now from the state are better than they've been. So maybe the time is now to do some of that building. It depends on where we are. So we'll have to see the cost, what the reimbursement rates, what we can do. But I know the Board of Ed is working on that scenario. So when we get that information, we can then take those numbers and plug it in and sort of see what that would look like. And look, it's a zero-sum game. If our debt service is going up, something else has to come down or our mill rate's gonna skyrocket. All three are options, so we'll have to look at what we wanna do, but if we're gonna really commit to debt service for capital projects, maybe we need to really tighten the reins on operating increases or really find tremendous efficiencies there or something. So we'll look at all those scenarios.
I'm glad you're identifying this. And one of the components that you maybe hinted at but didn't fully develop was that the state is seeing cutbacks of federal programs upon which it has relied and had assumptions about, and those are being cut back. If that results in less federal assistance to municipal school funding, that hits us. And that will be a critical factor in all this. I see this as a critical issue. And it comes back down to, why do people live in Simsbury? And one of the things that always comes up along with open spaces is the school system. So this is a critical debate we're gonna have to have.
Yeah, and when we were debating whether to do the senior center, we felt that was also critical because taking care of our seniors. So we did huge analysis and estimates and different scenario planning. And once we had specifics, we could target specifics. It's a very specific survey that went out.
Yeah.
Not Survey Monkey. It was done with professionals, really targeting so that we had statistically reliable data, and that's something we should consider. And once we have good numbers, and I think we'll have to evaluate that. Basically, if I'm looking right now, it will be more than probably. It would take our mill rate higher than our peers, so going in the exact opposite direction of goal number one to make us competitive. But to Art's point, maybe you get what you pay for. So are they willing to pay for that? And maybe they are. So, and our job is to sort of suss that out and figure out what is reasonable to put before them and what tools do we need to get to that point. So that will be part of the analysis that we'll go through. And I know Mark has already met with the company that we used last time, and they're really great. And so I think at some point we will see a funding request for that, depending on when the Board of Ed gets their analysis done. So those are sort of the things coming down the road. Capital Reserve Fund, the forever question, should there be a minimum amount in it? Right now we have about 4 million. Do we just say to them, use what you want, come up with a plan, it's gotta last you for 4 years, come up with a plan, but leave 250 in case there's a crisis. The reason why I chose 250 is when we initially set it up, it was for 50,000. I think Glastonbury used 500, and they upped it to $1 million. We don't have to put anything there, but if folks could give some thought to that, you don't have to do that today. I mean, we do have general fund reserves too, but those are meant for a more rainy day rather than a capital emergency, so. And if we're gonna rely on the general fund, maybe we need to bring the general fund up to GFOA standards and get it to 16.5% if we're not gonna use the capital reserve for that. So those are the trade-offs to think about. We don't have to decide that today. We have, again, an aspirational goal that we rarely meet. As resources permit, prioritize placing recurring capital and operating budgets, but because those compete with other operating needs, those are usually the first to go. But to the extent we can, we'd like to see that put back in the operating budget. We did that for many years, if you recall. We put the plow truck back in the operating budget. We put 3 police vehicles back in the operating budget. We put recycling materials back in the operating budget. So to the extent the budgets permit, we're in a terrible time to do this right now, but don't lose sight of that as a goal. Capital project sheets and multi-year requests. We'd like to see capital project sheets for all capital projects in the CIP instead of just 1 year, so that we can sort of understand where we are, prioritize multi-year vetting for major capital projects, add projected start and completion dates for all capital, list each funding source separately, identify whether project is replacement, maintenance, new, upgrade, improvement, indicate disposition status of the plan that is being replaced. Prioritize CIP and CNR capital projects for 2027, that's a perpetual ask. One question that we left unresolved, and I don't know the answer to this, I don't have a strong preference on this, but the charter says that for capital projects, for permanent fixtures or permanent capital, those have a 3-year lapse. But vehicles technically would not be included in that, and I checked with Mary Glassman and those used to lapse every year. So the question is, how do we wanna do that? And the reason why this came up is when we did the last quarterly, especially on the town side, there were about $4 million that we'd appropriated that weren't used. So, and they were mostly for vehicles and for equipment. So should those be lapsed? If they lapse, you go, oh no, I can't do that. It's like, oh, you can do it. You just have to budget it for next year, or you have to ask for a supplemental appropriation. It's just a way to sort of monitor that. I don't have a strong opinion on that, but I did want folks to give some thought to that. I really encourage you to look at the charter, section 812G, and see where you wanna go with that. Most towns do it 1 year for just minor equipment. But because it's in the capital reserve fund, I don't know. Does anyone have any initial thoughts on that?
I think 1 year seems reasonable.
What?
I think 1 year seems reasonable.
It might even be 18 months. I mean, we have the ability to do that. I've asked Amy to give some thought to that, and so she'll get back to us as we get closer. We'll do a harder look in October because at that point we'll have the grant list numbers, estimates. Our traditional payback is 416,250 and 550,300. We have reviewed this I think twice. Amy had mentioned that she may want to bring it to us for review again. Are you still thinking of doing that in September or no?
We'll get back to you, Chair. We're talking about it.
Okay, if that is presented to us, that needs to be done in September. Any later than that, we'll start to get too late for budget planning purposes. We do ask all policy changes be done over the summer, so we're already on the late end of that. So give some thought to that. The one thing I will say to that is a commitment to increase budgets over 5 years if we do that at a time when I'm not sure that commitment that would be a difficult commitment to make, but I'm not opposed to hearing if there wants to be a presentation on that. Is folks comfortable with it? Okay, we'll hear about that in September if there is a case for that. Let me just say, even if you don't do that, we have $4 million sitting in capital reserves. We can pay for capital the same amount, because even if you do this, 416, like say it's 500, be 500 in the operating budget, 450 out of capital reserves. The next year you're paying back $50,000, you get nothing for it. It's taken 5 years to pay it back, so you gotta do the whole thing again. So now you're taking another 50. It becomes a revenue source, it perpetuates. So it does add to the budget each year you do it, and it does require using capital reserves. So we'll do that analysis though in September if that's something the town wants us to relook at. We do have substantial balances in the WPCA, Simsbury Farms, and residential property budgets. We've asked Mark for long-term plans for fund balances and to really evaluate whether we can use some of those dollars instead of capital reserves, because that then frees up capital reserves for some other projects, and we'll look at that as well. Salaries and benefits, we do budget the vacancy rate on the town side. I understand, Neil, that you do not budget the vacancy rate, so that may be something you wanna think about. I don't know, that's also the source that helps you counterbalance special education dollars, but we would ask at least Mark to continue budgeting the vacancy rate. And we have always said, budget full salaries, not partial salaries for mid-year starts, so that we don't have a big cliff the following year. I just wanna make sure people are still committed to that. Okay, cause any mid-year starts would then be captured in the vacancy rate, so it's not, we could do that, alright. We have asked Mark and Amy to provide a breakdown, and perhaps that needs to be done by our actuary of town benefits so that we can get an idea of what it costs to run the town. We see salaries for police, but what are salaries and benefits for the police? We would get a better picture of where the town's money is going if we could see those broken down by department, or at least by major departments. If you can't do it all, just police, public works, and library are our biggest contributors there. Major policy recommendations, again, outstanding. We do ask for it in July and future years, but because Amy had requested we potentially relook at the traditional payback. We would do that in September, but going forward, just major policy changes in September so that we don't do policy changes in the middle of the budget, or else you run the risk of it doing the policy change to be able to pay for more stuff. Policies should be based on best practices. Abatements and exemptions, we've asked them to be shown in the budget. That's a continuing request that we have. In terms of requests for information, we get our monthly financial reports from Amy. We'll be getting a copy of the fraud risk audit in September. we'll have the preliminary official general obligation bond issue in 2025, which is a tremendous document with a lot of good information. So we'll have a draft of that actually probably in September. We'll do the fiscal year 2025 closeout in October, and that will include encumbrances and probably moving some money into capital reserves. I've asked Amy for a disposition of property summary. What property have we gotten rid of? A list of that, and how have we gotten rid of that? We'll have the grand list estimate in October. We'll have the first quarterly report in October. The draft audit and management letter, we expect that to be given to us, we just heard today, in December. Tri-board will begin looking at fixed cost estimates, but that could possibly be moved to January depending on everyone's schedule. We'll have the fiscal year estimate and reports for health and from our actuary on retirement in December. We've asked for both of those. Right now, what we do is we budget and then we get, oh, by the way, you owe this after the budget is passed. So Amy's done a great job working with our actuary. We expect that to be much better shape going forward. The audit, we communicated with our auditor tonight that we expect that to be done in a timely fashion by December 31st. Financial data reporting is given to OPM in January. We should get a copy of that. We'll have the second quarterly report in January. One thing I did want to mention to our board, because we have our January meeting on the 14th, that is probably not going to be enough time to get the quarterly report. So I talked to Amy about moving our January meeting to later in the month so that we can give her time to complete the quarterly report. So watch for that in our next meeting, is a proposal to change that date. February, we get the grand list, and a third quarterly report, we get town and education. Third quarterly report in April. The reason why we need that is sometimes we catch major issues. One year we caught $1 million correction that we needed to make. So it's really important to get that quarterly report. It shows us where revenues are, gives us an indication of whether we're gonna be short, whether we're gonna have money to fund capital in the following year. So taking all that, if you could go to the calendar, Amy, we won't go through it. I just plugged in the dates from last year, what it would look like. We need to get feedback from the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen if that works for them. And I put in the charter thing. So if we were doing it like last year, this is kind of the dates-ish that we would do. Look at final dates from after staff coordinates among themselves and with the but just to give us a look of sort of what's coming and what we do at the different meetings for our roadmap, but very rough draft, subject to revision, subject to review by the other tri-boards, by the other two boards. So I don't think we need to go through that because I just plugged in the holidays, vacation dates, charter dates, and work backwards from there, but they could be moved within the confines of what the charter requires. But I did wanna give people just sort of another opportunity to talk about what they would like to convey during the budget process. I mean, these are, what I threw in was everything we've done. Is there anything you wanna do differently, you wanna think about differently?
I don't know, this is pretty thorough. I think the process is always a little bit time constrained, so it's hard to say. Like, I feel like the other groups do as best as they can. I think as early as we can go, giving guidance and all that kind of stuff. Trying to be as open as we can with the discussion so that we're not left at the last minute to have to make an approval on something, but I don't know, I think this is a pretty thorough list.
I mean, it's a place to start. I mean, what we're trying to do is give the public and the boards, what are the factors we're looking at? It's not a formula. If it was a formula, you wouldn't need the Board of Finance.
Right.
These are all the things we look at.
And as substantive as the tri-board meeting can be, meaning some idea of what we see as a potential growth in the mill rate, if there is one, and some substantive idea from them of what they're really gonna need. In other words, if at the tri-board we just discuss dreams and policies, it's usually a difficult year when they have an idea of really where we're going to be.
Mhm.
And they have a serious idea of what is there gonna be anything exceptional during the year. the process works.
Yeah, so I think, we, at this point, obviously, we don't have any data. We have initial estimates on the grand list, which are poor, about 800,000 grand list growth next year, which is not gonna be enough to get us where we need to on operating budgets. So we'll get an updated number in October, and from there we'll be able to start making some more realistic, and then the next big number we get is the governor's budget, although it's a biennial budget, so we have a pretty good idea where that's gonna be next year. We can plan for that a little bit easier this year. And then there's the wild card is what's happening at the federal government and how is that gonna trickle down and impact the local level, and I think at this point we don't know. But we'll continue to monitor. I mean, I'll open it up to Wendy and Jeff, is there anything that would be helpful to get from us to your boards that you would like?
Right now in August, I'm not really thinking about it. I do agree that some form of guidance at the tri boards, that we're not just shooting in the dark to figure out what to do and go from that.
Yeah, great. So the more we can have a legitimate substantive discussion to try board, the better, I think, for all three of them.
Yeah, and we'll try and put down all our policies so that you have them in one place, so you don't have to read the 400-page document we have. Just target them for we'll get those organized. I would personally love help, so I don't know who has the time. Maybe it's probably Art, that's his bailiwick. Oh, you're not gonna be here. Art. I'm gonna need help, someone translating some of this Excel sheets into written language and making it readable as sort of a motion, so it'll either be
Sure.
you or Bert or
It's been an enjoyable relationship.
I might still come to you for that. So we'll try and get that, and of course we'll try and keep all of you informed. Neil, is there anything you think would be helpful or
You laid
that
an
we can
awful
do
lot
to
of
make
it
your
out
life?
there.
What?
You laid an awful lot of it out right there.
I mean, that's pretty much it. Honestly, it wasn't that hard. This is what we do every year, but just putting it all in one place, I thought was kind of helpful. You can see it.
Absolutely.
It's sort of almost all of these, I think all of them are based on best practices. We're not very adventurous, this board.
I mean, in the end, there's a couple of major drivers on each of the budgets, and that's gonna start us, at one point, and all the rest is how do we get to something that everybody's comfortable with in the end.
And then we think the voters will accept, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
we don't, there's a lot of information we don't have. We don't have the needs of the town or the school yet. But the only thing I would just emphasize to you, anything you can do, if you see a vacancy that doesn't need to be filled, this is the year not to fill it. If you can think of ways to conserve your budget or find savings, this is the year to do it. Alright, are we good with that? Alright,
Yeah,
why don't we
great.
take like a 5-minute break, cause I just need to get a sip of water and then we'll go into the policy discussion. Hopefully we'll be able to zip through that. Before we do that, cause you guys are welcome to stay, but you're here, I'll just congratulate Amy. I was so happy. She put all in the same font, fixed the formatting, huge amount of work, but makes a huge difference for transparency and accessibility for the public. So thank you. Alright, so we'll just take a 5-minute break and then come right back.
Sounds good.
If there's no, I'll wave to SCTV. If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and table the policy review until next month so that we don't keep Jeff and Neil here forever. That's really only 75 pages, so we'll just table that till next month. Can I have a motion though to approve the two minutes?
I will move to, can I do both at once?
Yeah, unless there are changes.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll say.
And second from Art, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, may I have a motion pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-202, the Board of Finance and staff will meet to discuss strategy and negotiations with respect to collective bargaining for units represented by Simsbury's education system. We will be meeting in the town manager's office with our thanks. I have a motion. Art,
Second.
Art and art. All in favor, please say aye. Motion carries. We will now adjourn to executive session in the town manager's office.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth, and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government come together.